So welcome back, everyone. So we are ready to start the next session that will be devoted to the gap analysis on stakeholder and public engagement in genomic application. And this session will be chaired by Elena Buzan and Marco Sollitto. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So thank you, Jose, for the presentation. Maybe for those who were not with us yesterday, I'm Elena Buzan. I'm coming from University of Primorska, Slovenia. And today with us is also Marco. Maybe Marco, you can represent yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Marco Sollitto and working with the University of Florence and working on this gap analysis from BG Work Package 11.
So today we would like to represent you just a preliminary study, what we did regarding the first phase of the literature review. And when we try to estimate the way the stakeholders were involved in the manuscript preparation or in some research project which outcome into the manuscript preparation. So maybe we can, Marco, you can move to the. So we heard quite a lot about in the first presentation what exactly how important is to involve stakeholders. But here I would like to just to emphasize a little bit that we were doing this literature mining. We need to define which stakeholder we are going to screen and look in the paper which are present, because some of them it's very difficult to estimate from the research paper. For example, we heard that one of the important stakeholders are, of course, they are research organizations, especially the scientists and researchers which are working with the related fields to the conservation genomics, like in taxonomy and ecology. But those stakeholders we cannot recognize for the research paper, so they were not included in this literature review. The other stakeholders we focus our effort in the literature review were divided in the following group. We tried to find the contribution of the civil society organization and the community members, especially local community, especially looking also forward to the citizen scientists and the volunteers who contribute in somehow to the project and the paper outcome. And of course, two important other ones were public authorities like agency, local government, agency and public institution. And here I'm putting quite as an output that we also look to the contribution for indigenous people, because we know that they are right holders, not just only interested parties. And the last group we were looking in the literature review were the business and the industry or the private funders. So these are the group we are trying to find out from the screening the different papers. And having in mind also, we heard quite a lot about the stakeholder engagement. And I would like to stress that we cannot estimate the stakeholder engagement which was done as an output to bring the paper and the scientific manuscript. So what we tried to estimate was just if the stakeholder was mentioned or in somehow if their involvement was mentioned, and we tried to clarify this. So we are having some kind of proxy, because having quite an overview about how the stakeholders were engaged in that research project to the literature review, it was not possible. Just to clarify a little bit, how do we define the stakeholders? As we define them also in this regards, that they are the group of people, organization or institution who have some interest into the project. But this interest can be different, and they have immediate benefits, like we heard before, or they can be sometimes also some kind of in connection with the policy and the connection in the way they need to do it. So they maybe sometimes they are also not so much interest. But on the other hand, we also need to be aware that there's quite a little bit of resilience still going on in the scientific community, and regarding if the stakeholders should be mentioned in the scientific paper. We will see today the results and what exactly the scientists could benefit by involving the stakeholders. So because of this, I would like to just stress 4 important pillars where we do see that the scientific project do benefit from the involving the stakeholders, and also in the way we can, even though in many projects, we do not have additional financial support for the stakeholder engagement. So one of these pillars are, of course, capacity and knowledge development. We are raising awareness about our project, but we also, as a scientist and as our contribution to the society, is to generate the new knowledge and to share this new knowledge and to improve the literacy across the stakeholders, especially what we heard across also the society. The next part is coming to the acceptability and sustainability. So sharing the technical expertise, we heard that in many cases in genomics now we are working with different sequencing centers, and there are people having those knowledge. We can share, they can share us with us the expertise, and we can really easily reach the project output. And of course, the other part are the policy makers, because we would like to make some change in biodiversity conservation and management. So we need to articulate our values we are getting with the policymakers. The next pillars is coming, of course, the one which is mentioned the most also yesterday, and probably we are going to mention this today, is the economic efficiency. We are, all of us would like to do the research and have enough money, but in this way, if we would like to do the research, we need to strengthen the science policy interface, because we know if the policy is changing, then the other contributions are connected also with the funding. And this could be in the different areas, doesn't the biodiversity genomics work also across not just the conservation, but also public health and agriculture and so on. And of course, that is also connected with the potential contribution of the research of the project. And the last pillar, which we do recognize, is the social equity and the cohesion. So it's good to align our research with the social need and expectation. And this is the most difficult part, I think, in many projects in the biodiversity genomic. But it's very important for us to estimate this agreement and disagreement. We know if we work with the society that there are still going on discussion that using a genomics, we are using a genetically modified organism, and more than half of society is very scared about this. So these kind of things we need to also solve, and it's important to work with the society in the way we heard before, in the right communication and the right dissemination to find a common language. And then the next one, I would like to we also heard quite a lot how the stakeholder engagement is important, and how we usually start with identification of the stakeholder. But I would like to also stress that this should be done before the project starts, because in some cases, if the interests of the stakeholders are high, it's important to involve them from the beginning of the project, not just in the maybe next phase or in the last phase. We also heard that the journalists are always interested in the results. So we probably know that we are not going to involve journalists maybe at the beginning of the project, or maybe better to the end of the project. So these are also things we need to keep in mind when and how to engage the stakeholders. So it's very good to make a list of them, and then to prioritize them according to the interests they have in the project, but of course, according to the also influence they can influence to the project. Because we heard from the Jean-Baptiste how it's important to have the decision makers, because they will, and also involving the reference genome, and how it's important the decision maker recognize the importance of the reference genome. So at the beginning, so they also can change quite a policy on the way of the monitoring of the species. And then we of course go to the communication and the end to the dissemination. But keep also in mind, in this process, we need to keep quite importantly regarding the legal and ethical requirements, according not just the GDPR, but also the other important factors which are included with indigenous people as a right holders, and also with the local communities which are and citizen scientists, which is a really rising in contribution across the Europe. regarding those people, volunteers who are really can contribute quite a lot to the research project. So how do we do the literature review? It was very, as I said before, it was very difficult to really estimate the stakeholder engagement. So what we try to go through the literature review is to identify the stakeholders according to the group I already mentioned, and of course then try to estimate how much in the way they were involved. So in the manuscript, were they co-author or they were just a knowledge in the manuscript. So then, Marco, maybe it's enough. So these are the 3 questions we were asking through the process. So as I said before, we just like to estimate the involvement of the stakeholders. So we ask ourselves, what are the stakeholders' role level or level of involvement in the research project, and we try to see if they are principal authors, co-authors, samples provider, funders, consulting service, statistician data analysis, and the others. Then we try to estimate to answer the next question, which is the phase of the study or research that the stakeholder has been involved. So it can be in the project planning, or maybe sampling and data collection, data generation, data analysis, manuscript writing, funding, and maybe outreach activities. And the last one was the stakeholder mapping, when you try to map the stakeholders according to the type or category, from the citizen scientists to the private funders, industry partners, governmental body, scientific funding agency, permits providers, practitioners, and non-profit organization. As I said before, we include only the stakeholders who were not coming from the research organization. So we cannot include the stakeholders from the other scientific fields which are correlated to the genomics, because it was impossible to get those information from the literature review.
So we'll start with this introduction on the literature review, and then I will go on the results that we obtain in the first phase. Basically, we were analyzing starting from around 10,000 papers that have been selected based on different keywords, and that was even explained yesterday by Jose. These 10,000 articles have been delivered to different reviewers, 80 reviewers, and then based on different topic, they've been included or excluded. Basically, if they present empirical data, they have been included, and then if these data are like genetic or genomic, they've been included. And if these papers, articles are mentioning some applications, and this has been well defined and well claimed, that these articles have been included. So starting from 10,000 papers, we have obtained around 7,000 papers. Sorry, papers. And that was the phase 1. This is, for example, the distribution of the papers along the years, and you see that papers related to the genomic and to the genetic has been increased along the years, and you see like a peak around 2020. Then we go to the results, and that's the first question that we asked. So basically, that we will ask today, I mean, to you, is if these stakeholders are, if you are like involving stakeholders in some of your research projects, and if have you ever performed the engagement activities in the past? I suppose that you should do, I mean, in your research activities, this kind of involvement and engagement, a different level of stakeholders.
Yeah, so we already have the first results, which we have around a little bit more. Now it's increasing to the 60%, 64%. So
yeah,
I think we can share the results. So regarding what you were saying to us, it's a little bit different that we go through the literature review. So maybe Marco, you can explain how do we get, what do we have for the literature review?
We have received around 17 now answers, and we have like the 65% they say yes, that in their research activities they are involving stakeholders, but this is something that is different a bit, within the literature review, we have obtained like a higher percentage of yes, so we are around the 79%. So, I mean, that's depending even from the level, because sometimes could be that, of course, the principal investigator is doing this stakeholder engagement. Here, maybe there are even other PhD students or postdoc that are not present, like for the stakeholder activities and engaging stakeholders. We can go to the second question. So the question is, if there is, which is the role of the stakeholder and which is the level of involvement in that you usually engage stakeholders in your research project or studies? I mean, they've been sample collectors or providers or funder. I mean,
it's like a mapping what we did, in the literature review, you have a multiple choice, so you can choose whatever you type of engagement or involvement of the stakeholders you did through your research or research project. We have 20 questions. We can wait a little bit more, Marco, maybe.
Yeah, sure. Just a few seconds and
yeah. People can, because it's a multiple choice, so we'll give you a little bit more of time to see. And then we will see the results we got from the literature review.
okay, I think that
Okay.
we can stop.
Okay.
Based
Yeah, we
on
can.
your answers, we have received around 68% like sample collector and provider, 56% permits provider, and 52% funder. And just like a small percentage in services like sequencing center or bioinformatics analysis, and data analysis and statistician is still a really low percentage, around 12%. With a good high, medium level of percentage as a field assistance and consulting, and low percentage in sharing material and reagents. If we go on the results of the literature review, we have like different results based on. We have a higher percentage of funder of the category that is including all the funder, and this is basically could be dependent from the reason why some journals present like a specific section for the funding bodies, so for all the funder of the research. And then we ask to the researcher if these stakeholders are even considered as starting from principal author or even considering the list of co-authorship. And in around 1,000 papers, there is this presence of co-authorship from different stakeholders. And around 500 articles are mentioning stakeholders as principal author. Another interesting result is that we have, of course, low percentage here of consulting. That was a bit higher in your answers. And even in permits provider and even in sample collector provider, we have a really high mentioning in your answer rather than the literature review. What about services? Of course, these services we were including basically sequencing centers and or centers that do based the bioinformatical part and or that are focusing on the sequencing process basically. And we see that the number of the articles that are mentioning this category is increasing along the years. This because with high throughput sequencing and with the reduction of the cost, this is really becoming more widespread analysis. If we go on the next question. Then we ask the reviewers to check in the papers if there are, in which phase of the project, of the research studies, these stakeholders have been involved. And so we will ask you the same. So in which phase of your project you are involving stakeholders? Of course, this is always a multiple choice, so.
We will wait. We have a 10 answer. We will wait a little bit, but it's interesting. So if we get a little bit more effort, it for the pool would be great. We will wait. Okay, maybe we have now 25. We can stop and try to end the pool, and I can share the results.
Okay, so okay, about your answers is going mostly on the as before to the sampling collection, and yeah, mostly sampling collection, but okay, only around 50%. You are mentioning outreach activities, funding process, and for example, even the project planning and design, or even the data collection in some cases. The result is always slightly different with slightly different what we obtain from the literature review, since of course here we have a higher percentage of funding process rather than what we obtain from your answers, but the same, we have really a low percentage in project planning and design here in the literature review rather than what you mentioned in the answers. But it's not so surprising, but of course, because the category related to the outreach activities, for example, there were only 14 papers mentioning some outreach activities phase for the stakeholder engagement in the articles, basically. And that's different because, of course, you with your project, you are having different outreach activities to express your project and to show the results of your project, for example. And for example, these outreach activities came from usually from paper where starting from, for example, from some hackathon or some so just like workshop initiatives that then end with some papers. We asked then even to put some to define some other categories to the reviewers that were not included by us in the answers. And for example, they found new different categories that are related to the early project phases. For example, the investigation, the logistic support during the sample, for example. Or during the analysis, for example, they went into detail to, for example, to identify to stakeholders that are related to taxonomical identification, and to the end part of the manuscript writing, for example, like the editing, the reviewing, or some stakeholders related, even some people helping in the graphical aspect of the paper, for example. And we can go to the next question, Elena.
Yeah, we go to the question of mapping now. Now be aware that the funding, it's different. Is it a public funding or private funding? You need to divide this. We are mentioning here practitioners. We are mentioning these here volunteers, because you mentioned also in the chat that you're using hunters or fishermen. We are putting them into the citizen scientists because they can contribute to the to the sample collection, but they can also contribute to the data interpretation and using of the results. So following the 10 principles of citizen science, they are involved somehow in the scientific process. So be aware of it, of this when you estimated the questions, the answer. And there's the other type of funders. In the case you use some kind of grants from the university or some research institution, which are not directly grants we are getting from the governmental body, private institution, research agencies. So these I would put in this preliminary research as the other type of grants. And the second phase, we will divide this also very clearly from where the grants for the applied genome is coming from. This is also important. We heard so much how the financial support is important to make some change.
Okay, I think that.
Okay, yeah, we can share the results.
Yeah, mostly is including some stakeholders related to the governmental body and policymakers. Of course, from the funding part, mostly are coming from some scientific funding agencies. And the university or research institute are like stakeholders for different aspects. And we are considering even like the 10 out of 20 are mentioning practitioners, and this is depending, we will check later and with the next question, which kind of practitioners are you engaging in your activities. And yeah, mostly some, yeah, mostly are this. No one is mentioning other type of funders. Some of you is mentioning some private funding. We can go to the results of sorry. Yeah, what we have seen in the stakeholder, what we have seen in the, which kind of stakeholders have been involved in the different articles that we are reviewing. Mostly are, of course, as you mentioned, some scientific funding agency, and of course, governmental body and policymakers. There is a small percentage of other private funding, so funding coming from different level from the private system. And we can see some a small percentage even of citizen scientist community representative. And that's like something that could be even, of course, including for example, in the sampling process. A small percentage have been even for the category of the industry partner and SMEs, and this was even present in your answers, where only the 5% were coming from some business activities. We can go further with with the second question related to the practitioners. So in this specific, which kind of practitioners you are involving in your research? This is, of course, depending from which kind of, which is your topic species that you are studying.
Yeah, we will wait a little bit. Yeah, if you are not working with practitioners, we know that you cannot fill the pool, so we understand this. So maybe I can end the pool and share the results.
Sure.
So So we do see that most of you collaborate with the national park and the museum. There's much less with the zoo and botanical garden, and we didn't get any answer. If some of you are not getting none of those, but expecting that at least some of you who didn't answer, you are not involved in any of the activities with the practitioners.
And then, of course, we just define these categories if they are, which is the jurisdictional level. So if they are coming from international, national, and local or regional level, and most in the highest percentage we was obtaining from the national level, as you can see, for the private funders, permits provider, the governmental body and policymakers, and the scientific funding agency. So basically the local and regional and the international level is always low considered of course, stakeholders from these entities are low considered in the articles that we were using as a proxy of the analysis. What we are doing now, we are moving to the second phase, and now the categories have been adjusted in the new standard operating procedure. The reviewers are double checking the categorization, and then what we will do, we will investigate the correlation between stakeholders and specific taxonomic groups to identify if there are potential gaps, and we will identify the correlation between stakeholders and countries. So just to inform if there is some differences between widening and strengthening countries, that was already done for the EU level, but we will go further for all the countries that we will. For all the countries, and then we will investigate the relationship between the kind of analysis. So if there is some correlation between high throughput and low throughput, and some stakeholder engaged from only for low throughput analysis and high throughput analysis, and which is the level of the stakeholder engagement. Then I will.
Okay, then we can maybe launch the tool, and then we will go to primary finding if you agree. So we would like to hear just from you if you are working with a policymaker, which are including also the funders, but not the research agency. So, but it should be policymaker who are giving us you the support. We would like to see how much this policymaker you are contacting and getting the fund are from the local or regional, national or international background. So I will also end the pool just to share the results. As you may see, the most of you are working with the national policymaker, a little bit less with the local, regional. Some of you also work with international. It means that you have some international project, and there are also some of you who are not collaborate with any kind of governmental body. And we would like to just launch the last pool. It is about the pool regarding the permits provider. This is maybe quite important from in the biodiversity genomics, because we know that because of Nagoya is becoming quite important. So also in the way we are not working with the protected species, but we would like to share the samples, sending the samples across the country. It's becoming quite important recently, and it's going in the future to really try to collaborate or involve in the way we should involve also the permit provider. But in this way, I don't think about just the governmental body. Sometimes you will need the permits also from some local institution, regional institution, just because of the area we are sampling or the species we are sampling. Okay. just to wait a little bit more. And then we can end and can share the results. So as you said, half and half of you working with national and local permit providers. Some of you are not working, so probably are not involved in the direct in the sampling. And some of you also work with the international private provider, which probably is called CITES or some others, which are important for sharing the samples or any other permits which were needed. Okay, then we would like to share with you just the two final slides. It's a little bit about the results we got from this preliminary finding. We got more than 80% of the manuscript who mentioned the stakeholder involvement, but most of these are connected with the funders. And this is something was mentioned by Marco before, because probably this is the cause in many cases, these are the requirement or from the manuscript or even from the funders to be mentioned in the research publication. So, and there will be a question from our side. Is the next question is our perception as a scientific community that if we do need to mention the funders, we mention them, but we do not acknowledge the other stakeholder contribution in the manuscript or even the involvement of the stakeholders, because keeping in mind that most of this literature review are mentioning the funders and what we heard today, and also from the other literature that you are working with many of those stakeholders, is it essential that we also mention the other stakeholders and acknowledge their work in our research manuscript. And the next one is the next slide, please, Marco. You can move.
Yep.
Yeah, the next slide is connected. We heard from you, and also we got from the literature review, the sample providers are acknowledged in many of these manuscripts. These are coming from the stakeholder institution, but in many cases, they are also volunteers. They can be participants of citizen science. They can be citizen scientists. They can be coming from local communities. And again, our question is, as a scientific community, do we need to work towards creating a more standardized understanding how to acknowledge and incorporate contribution of the sample providers in this and other practitioners as in the data analysis, or maybe more data interpretation, I'm sorry, not the data analysis, in the applied genomics, because we are discussing now the 2 days regarding the applied genomics, especially we were having this in mind in light of the rising contribution of the citizen science across the Europe. And we know by definition that the citizen science is including lay public into the scientific process, but not as a sample provider, which is really common in genomics, biodiversity genomics, but also as somebody who can contribute to the data interpretation. And we can follow for citizen science EXA 10 principles, which was published in 2015, and the same things coming up with the collaboration with the local communities, with hunters, with fishermen, with the beekeepers, all of these people who maybe have a really important traditional knowledge, but in some cases we do not put them even in acknowledgement, or we do not put them in the co-authors, because when we correlate the percentages of the manuscript which are mentioned in the sample providers to the percentages of the manuscript who are mentioning the co-authors, there is a big difference and big gap in this between. So these are the two questions, and now we would like maybe I don't know if we have still time for the Mentimeter, or if there are some questions in the chat we can try to answer. But we would like to hear your opinion regarding this. So maybe just if we go through the chat, I don't know, Marco, what do you suggest, so we can follow them?
We have only 5 minutes, so we can discuss something from the chat.
Yeah.
Where will it go?
So, yeah, Camila. You're muted.
Hi, sorry. I was thinking that in many cases, we who work on molecular biology, genomics, we get samples from collaborators, sometimes from small collections, and them themselves got the samples from others. And this chain sort of loses the track of who actually sampled and for what purpose, and would this person be like to be involved somehow, or at least mentioned. No, so I think this the big biobanks or more structured biobanks, they maybe have policies, but I think the great majority of our lab collections don't have those policies, and I think it goes a lot in this direction that the information gets lost because maybe there is no policy that is, let's say, generally accepted on how to deal with this.
So you would agree that we should work as a scientific community in genomics to get some kind of, I would say, not the protocols or suggestion how to deal in these regards. Maybe really if we're using these kind of samples to try to go back to those chains and see who is really sample provider and contact, and at least knowledge those people or institution who are, I think that this is coming really important also regarding the benefit sharings and Nagoya in some way. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. At a minimum, like best practices. No, in some cases there should be rules even, but at a minimum we should agree on best practices and keep improving them, because yeah, I find it very sad sometimes that this information gets lost and you cannot even go back to the people who actually provided the samples.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, we heard here that the practitioners are. The other things are the practitioners part. We discussed quite a lot what exactly are practitioners. We heard here the practitioners can be also the governmental bodies. Some of the, you would say, okay, practitioners are also citizen scientists, but maybe we should discuss also about the contribution of the local communities of people who are volunteering, coming to the field with us, collecting the samples, how we can knowledge their contribution. Do we even give them possibility to be a part of the manuscript? This is also something we should think about, as I said before, in light of citizen science, because by definition, it's very important to take care to get through all of these 10 principles and really to share the feedback to the local communities and citizen scientists of our results. And do you think that maybe also in this regards, scientific community we should work a little bit on this? Maybe Marco, if we can just share some of those questions, maybe for the last minute, maybe not all of them, but exactly those questions regarding the local communities and citizen scientists. I would really like to see the feedback. How do you think that we can maybe somehow deal with the higher recognition of...
Just 1 second.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Hatia was saying that this should be the best practice, but sometimes was not recorded in the past. Yeah, I agree. And this metadata is still missing. Not this one. Yeah, we had quite. So this one, how we can think that we can improve not that one, Marco, another one.
Yes.
The contribution from local communities and citizen scientists. If you have any kind of suggestion, maybe we can use this last minute to hear your opinion. Also, if you already work with the local community and citizen scientists, it will be really good to see how do you deal with these questions and how do you involve them into your research project. Are you going to acknowledge them into your research manuscript? Or maybe are you going to maybe involve some of the citizen scientists as a co-author of your research project? Are we as a genomic community are there yet or not? maybe yeah, there is a link
There
to
is a
the
link in the
pool.
chat, and you have to use the code that's written in the link.
Yeah, I don't know if we still have a time or we can. Yeah, we saw now some that we need to. Yeah, I agree that we need to engage, but do we? Yeah. So I think agree that we need to acknowledge their work, and even having a workshop like we heard to give them the feedback about the results, and even what we heard before, some knowledge platform when we can share the results, or maybe to share the way we can approach to them would be great. Yeah. And engage, of course, those people, if they are samples providers, we need to engage them from the beginning of the project, but also after we got the results. Yeah, this is also quite a good suggestion to have a different type of acknowledgement, maybe to recognize more the contribution of, because sometimes we said thanks to the hunting organization, but we know that the whole hunting organization were not involved in sample collection. So maybe we should really think about people who are really contributing with helping us in the field, helping us with the logistic to mention those people. Of course, if those people would like to be mentioned, this is also something we need to ask them and how they would like to be mentioned in the manuscript or in any kind of the research project output. And this is also quite a good suggestion. Include activities in benefit sharing statement as a minimum. So this is also what was probably Camila having in mind, that some kind of policy, it will be really good to develop across the genomic, biodiversity genomic community. Okay, thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Elena and Marco, for leading this session. So we will now take a break and come back at 11:15 with species of economic importance. So see you soon.